everyone, and this is Rose Odette with Bullish on Business, and today's episode is so special. I've got my friend Loghan Call with me, the founder of Men of Devotion, and one of the most grounded, soulful leaders that I know. Loghan has lived a few lifetimes in one, I tell you, from winning Emmy Awards in broadcast journalism to becoming a regenerative chef to now leading transformational work for men that's raw, real, and deeply needed in today's world. Through Men of Devotion, he created a space where men can show up actually as they are, no masks, no bravado, just a commitment to truth, healing, and living with intention. We're diving into what devotion looks like in real life, how men can reclaim their power and emotional intelligence, and why vulnerability is one of the strongest things you can ever practice. I've known Loghan for a while now because we met at Oops. And if you're a big fan of this podcast, I do talk about it a lot. And every time we talk, I leave more inspired. So I can't wait for you to hear this one. How are you doing today, Loghan?
I'm doing well, especially in the midst of all of what the holidays entail. I'm very grateful for all of the work that I put into myself and all the support that I have, especially this time of the year. There's a lot flowing, but it's great to be on, and it's a fun time of the year, especially at the end of the year, to drop in with you.
Thank you. Well, it's awesome to have you with us and someone with your background. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. Tell us about your journey from filmmaking to food to facilitating men's work. Really, that's quite diversified, but we all have interesting winding roads that we take in this life. And so tell us what the common thread is between those three different areas.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning part of my life, it was definitely about I had an immense amount of privilege and a upbringing that really allowed me to pursue what I was passionate about. And I would say that that was really the through line for me was passion. I was big into sports growing up. That's how I found sports journalism. And then as I kind of started entering really my professional career, I kept refining my focus and kept looking. And in a lot of ways, I just wasn't satisfied with sports journalism. I loved it, but it felt very repetitive. And I knew that I wanted to do something bigger than that. Not to say that's, of course, all things, including sports journalism, has their place, and I'm very grateful for it. But there was something, there was definitely a calling. And so, where I'm sitting at now, I realize that what's the through line has always been I love being of service. I love being of service to people, the world as a whole, to the earth. And so, looking back, that was very clearly why I kind of kept moving and shifting and looking and pursuing. And but in especially in my early 20s, even in my late 20s, it felt more just like a journey that I was on. And it was born through a desire to to do good, so to speak. Again, I didn't have the terminology that I have for it now, but making the decision to enter into men's work and supporting men and women, really, that was a conscious choice of really feeling called to a certain mission and purpose, and a real desire to step up my game of how I show up to be of service.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's kind of the long and the short of it. I mean, there's a lot there in the journey and a lot of different reasons why things happen, but that would definitely be the through line and in the connector between all of the different worlds that I've had the opportunity to play in.
Well, I think everyone will be curious about the sports journalism because that's something that's like in our media seems to be in our face a lot. So where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit about your Emmy and tell us a little bit about where were you born and where did you grow up? And just a little deeper dive in you, Logan, as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to say I've lived everywhere when someone asks me where I'm from. I was born in Pittsburgh, raised in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley, and then I had a very alternative upbringing and schooling, lots of homeschooling and independent study. When I was in between freshman and sophomore year of high school is when we moved from upstate New York to San Diego, California. And
Wow.
then, yeah, so I spent about 8 or so years in North County, San Diego. That's where I dropped out of college and pursued sports journalism, moved to LA, where I pursued more of the filmmaking and media, started a media company there. My dad has always been in the film industry, so I had connections in pool, like kind of there's a gravitational pool there. And then LA was where I found culinary. I spent, I made a very kind of out of the blue but conscious choice to move to the Ozarks, southern Missouri for a year. That was culinary related. And then now northern Michigan, which has been I always forget at this point, 8 or 9 years. And that was culinary related. That was for a job in culinary. So moving around has oftentimes been for professional reasons as well. But that's been one of the gifts of my life is to be able to be in a lot of different diverse cultures and spaces and different types of people from all different backgrounds of life, which is absolutely been one of the greatest lessons in my life. And in terms of sports journalism, I like to say as I did what all failed athletes do. I mean, I grew up wanting to be a professional baseball player. I love sports. And I realized when I moved out to San Diego that I was nowhere close to the talent level that was out there. And so after trying out for junior college is when I realized I was not going to make it officially. And that's where I found sports broadcast journalism. And I was very fortunate to have incredible professors, John Shalesnik in radio and Pat Hahn in television, who were incredible mentors. And I fell in love with it. And it was very helpful for me to kind of break out of being a pretty shy kid because I was very comfortable talking about sports.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you for that background. I learned so much about you in that short 5 minutes or 1 minute. Thank you for that. And so I understand from what you said that you really want to use this life you've been given to really make the world improve, help people, and really do what you can from that perspective. So, what does devotion mean to you personally? It's a deep word, not the concept so much, but how you live it day to day.
yeah, so it's a relatively new word for me. And when I first was playing with the word and thinking about potentially using it for men of devotion and men's work, I was definitely resistant to it because it has a lot of religious connotations, and I'd like to be able to make whatever it is that I offer as welcoming as possible. Uh, uh, Even though I have my own relationship with God, it was, I was like, I don't know, but what Men of Devotion really is about is showing up every single day. It's a commitment that's deeper than a commitment in a lot of ways. And so devotion really speaks to the level of commitment that I hold myself to and then that I'm calling men forward into as well. And so it felt like a very powerful word with a lot of depth. And it really speaks directly to what what I'm calling forward for myself in my life, let alone what I want to be supporting men in, which is devotion to self and showing up for self every day, and then devotion to being of service to something much greater. So it it really landed and it was a little bit of an edge for me to use the word, but anytime I'm challenged by something, I usually see it as an invitation. So it
Mhm.
felt like a powerful invitation to claim the type of energy that we're looking to support men and cultivate in their daily lives.
Well, it definitely does pack a punch, and there's a lot in that word. I think, like you said, the daily devotionals, but then I also remember Olivia Newton-John's song, I'm Hopelessly Devoted to You, which is one of the all-time favorites. And so devotion is really a perfect word from what I've learned about your project. I don't want to call it a project. I want to call it, is it a business? Is it what would you call it?
It's a good question. What immediately comes to mind would be community. It's definitely a community that we're building, and it's a community and it's a mission that is the intention is that it outlasts any of us who are here now. And it's something that it's really want to create a culture around what we're building and something that can really be passed on to future generations. That's
That's
something
so
that
profound. That's leaving a legacy. Wow. So you've talked before about sovereignty and accountability. What does that actually look like in practice?
so sovereignty really speaks to one of the most powerful questions I've ever asked, and I asked it relatively maybe, and I've been doing men's work for around 3 years, halfway through that journey, probably. The question of what has power and control over me, and really realizing that sovereignty can have some negative connotations, like if I were to view it through a lens of ego or narcissism or all about me, but it's really not, that's not my lens on it all. Sovereignty really speaks to ensuring that I have personal sovereignty in a world that can be filled with distractions and unhealthy vices and addictions and things. And so I've really had to work through a lot of things, whether it was smoking pot or gambling, pornography. There's a lot of things that everyone struggles with, and there's very specific things that are very targeted at men. So it's sovereignty is really about supporting not myself, but then other men in looking at that head on and being really honest in what are the things that are keeping me ungrounded and keeping me from being fully present and coherent. Because in my experience, if I'm not if other things have power and control over me, then I don't really stand a chance. Someone else really is pulling the strings, so to speak. So that's sovereignty, and then accountability is am I doing what I say that I'm going to do? It's am I accountable to the commitments that I'm making? That's really daily accountability is I have a certain set of commitments that I set for myself, and it's ensuring that I'm accountable and taking ownership when I'm not.
Mm,
Taking ownership without shame
mm,
or guilt.
mhm.
So it's both and, but that's a little about sovereignty and accountability.
Well, I think that I'm so happy you defined sovereignty in that way because it does really, to me, it feels like a declaration of the way I'm going to show up, the way I'm going to live my life. And when men show up at men of devotion, what's usually the moment that cracks something open for them? Maybe a breakthrough.
It typically is different for every man. I've been outside of date men of devotion. I've been hosting men's circles, just spaces where men can show up for many years now, and it really does depend. Some men come in and are just this idea of there being a group of men in which they are welcome immediately cracks them open. Some men come many times before they really establish in what would I would say is a level of trust. So it really does depend, but I would say overall there is definitely just something to this idea of men showing up in practicing the level of courage and vulnerability it takes to enter a space where the intention is very clear that that we are showing up as a group of men to support one another in the deeper level emotional body issues, challenges that we're facing. So a lot has to do with just the intentional space, the intention and the agreements that we all commit to. And so being in that space tends to start to crack things open. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right space. I mean, for a lot of men, it can be too much.
Mm,
And the ego and in our subconscious wants to protect us.
mm,
We would, as I always say, we'd prefer to stay in the hell we know than the fear of the unknown. And
mhm.
so when we're confronted with the unknown, even if it's in a very safe and supported environment, sometimes our mind just can't handle it. So it's a very interesting thing. I always say that the absolute best that I can do is plant the seed, and sometimes it's ready to sprout, and sometimes it's still germinating. And it looks different for every man who comes in and at least tries it on for size.
Well, Logan, you appear to me through the 2 years or more that I've known you, super intellectual, super kind of quiet, and if ever still waters run deep, that is you. I want to talk to you a little bit. You know, I have Lead Like a Lioness as a brand that I'm creating, so it's kind of a women's thing. And I have a newsletter out on LinkedIn, and I have been lucky enough to get almost 1,500 subscribers. And when I look at it, half of them are men. Do you ever have you ever been approached by a woman wanting to join your group the way that men join my lioness group?
Well, I would say that it, even though I am in the men's workspace on social media, typically more women follow me than men, which is relatively common in kind of the inner work, spiritual spaces. I have never had women ask me if they can join the men's circle because I only just because I think it's very clear that it is for men. But
Mhm.
I definitely have a lot of women who enjoy talking to me about what men's circle is and kind of the structure and the format. There's a lot of women in my life who are in women's circles, which of course are its own unique thing. And there's definitely been a lot of interest around potentially having some co-ed spaces or simply even just being able to learn more about how we structure and facilitate things. I mean, as someone who believes that we carry both the masculine and feminine energies within all of us, regardless of our gender. I, the cross-pollination, of course, of ideas and how we do things is so important. So it's a very intriguing space to me, and we both offer so much to one another that, yes, there is that cross-pollination, and there's plenty more to come. And I'm really excited. Traditionally, if I were to generalize, women have been doing more of the deeper inner work for a while now, and now men are coming into the space, and we kind of are taking our own unique approach to it. And now, like with my mentor, I'm working with him because him and his wife are very passionate about the co-ed spaces, and honestly, they are they're infinitely more powerful than single gender spaces because we get to create understanding between men and women, which is just critical if you were to ask me, especially the times we find ourselves in. So yes, there's so much more to play at those intersections, and it's wonderful to hear that men are so equally enjoying the content you put out, even when you're referring it to lioness. And the more that we can understand one another, the better off we're all going to be.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy it. How has this work changed you, Logan, as a man, as a friend, and as a leader that you obviously are?
I don't know if there's a place in my life that it hasn't fundamentally changed me in a very positive way. I found men's work. I attended my first Sacred Sons weekend when I was really at the lowest and darkest and peak burnout place in my life. I really couldn't make heads or tails of anything in any area of my life, whether it was personally, professionally, etc. And so it was a break. I didn't know what was possible in these spaces and places. And when I found it, it was a light flip switch. It was like, oh, this is where I belong. And so I continue to be a student. I will be a lifelong student of all this work. I enjoy being a participant as much as I enjoy facilitating and leading. And it truly has fundamentally shifted every area of my life in terms of how I show up for myself, then how I show up for friends and community. It has had a tremendous impact in how I show up as in partnership and intimate partnership. And it's that's I mean naturally it's part of why I'm so passionate about this work is because of how much of a fundamental shift that it has had for me in my life. And you know, I, and it's, and most of the work that I've done in these spaces is pretty fundamental and basic. It's not, I know people have different, I think, visions of what they might conjure up in their mind's eye when they think about this. It's like I haven't been to any jungles in Peru. It's not plant medicine. It's pretty straightforward practices. And that's really what I'm passionate about bringing through daily accountability and mental devotion is it's actually not. It's not all that woo-woo. It's not all that wild and crazy, and you don't have to travel halfway around the world. It's practices that can be deployed every single day exactly where you are.
So you don't have to walk on hot coals.
I, you know, no, I would if you did though, this work would definitely support that. I think you'd have that much more success in walking on coals. I mean, there's definitely things that we do somatically and with the body and processing and moving through emotion and all those things. But again, it it is relatively it's both very simple and complex at the same time, but I hold men of devotion calls via Zoom, and we have men's circles here in my heated pole barn. That's one of the things that the power is really in the intention, the agreements, and um, the commitment.
That's perfect. And it sounds as though you have stillness, you have nature play in your process of healing and teaching. What do you feel, where do you find more satisfaction in the stillness, in nature, in the daily routine?
Probably all of them. It's hard to pick one. I would say, though, if I were to pick one, the most important thing is showing up every single day in my morning routine. That's like the non-negotiable. I have to renegotiate what that routine looks like sometimes when traveling or when dynamics of my life change. But every single day, there's some level of a morning routine that I do. And that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about supporting men and doing is in doing it in the morning. Because if you're going to make a commitment to yourself at some other point in the day, there's a good chance it won't happen because life happens. And so I used to be the type of guy who would stay up late and like wouldn't would snooze the alarm or wouldn't set an alarm. As an entrepreneur, I could get away with all sorts of things, and now I've become an early morning person, getting up usually anywhere from 4 to 6 in the morning, and so it ensures that I have some nugget of time in the morning. And even if I have to get up that much earlier to make sure I have that 15, 30 minutes, ideally it's an hour, but it looks different for everyone. But the morning routine, setting the foundation for the day is, I mean, it's everything. And outside of the period of life that so many of us go through, having young kids running around, it's something that I support all men in having.
I love getting up early too. I've been an early bird for a very long time, and I totally believe in routines. I have to do it every day. I do my meditation, then I do my journaling, then I do my goal setting, and then I do my little workout. And if I didn't do that, I just I walk around aimless. I have I'm lost without it. I've been doing it since about, oh geez, about 25, 30 years now. I'm a lot older than you.
Well, I think it's a very fascinating thing, right? I don't know if this is at all similar for you, but for a while, for most of my life, I saw routines and structure as a barrier to freedom, or it would like it got in the way, or it was a chore to do. And now I see discipline and structure and routine actually as what creates a lot more freedom and a lot more health and all of those things in my life. But for most of my life, I just didn't have that view on it. And, it just, the inner rebel in me didn't want any of that. And now I'm realizing the more that I am showing up and accountable to these agreements and commitments, then the better off I feel. The big change transformation for me is I stumbled upon an Instagram video of a monk, and he was in an interview and he was saying that if you snooze your alarm clock in the morning, you're starting the day out of integrity with yourself.
Ooh,
And
that's deep.
that just
Love that.
it just blew my mind
I
because I
love
was like,
it.
because you're making the night before when you set your alarm, you're making a commitment to yourself. And so if you're snoozing it, you're immediately out of accountability and integrity with yourself to start the day. And I was like, oh wow, like okay, yeah. So
Shame
like
on those inventors of the snooze alarm.
well, it's tricky, right? It's easy to do. And so, now my phone's out of my bedroom. All the things are in place to make sure that I don't hit snooze and I don't go back to
Right,
to sleep. And it's a practice too, where I can renegotiate that commitment, but I have to do it ahead of time consciously,
right. And
So,
you're in your sovereignty that way. I love that.
yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
for me, why I didn't do it sooner is that I felt it was a waste of time. I was like, I know what I need to do. I would try to meditate. I would try to slow down and write my journal, like what was yesterday about, what did I do, blah, blah, blah. And back before I really appreciated it, I just felt like this is silly, this is dumb. Let me just get to it. But when my father died, I had to take a beat because that really hit me. And that's when I started. And it really helped me through that grieving process. And we all find our way to, like you said, everyone's different and everyone has their own. And one of the things that I haven't had a chance to do is eat any of your food. You've got that chef's heart too. How does nourishment and food or ritual like play in the circle? Do you bring your chef's heart and the need for nourishment in the men's circle?
To some degree, I do sometimes. So I do practice my culinary work on men's weekends as a chef. In men's circle, it's a subject that we do talk about, and it's something that I'll continue to bring through more. It's the nourishment, what we put into our bodies, what we're eating and drinking can never, from where I'm sitting, be talked about enough. It
Mm.
has such a profound impact on our bodies and our ability to pay attention and stay focused and so many things. So I'm very grateful to have the culinary nutrition background. I grew up with a mom who was a chef and is a nutritionist and has all of this wisdom and knowledge. And yeah, it's another one of those things like in our world. I mean, when you were talking about like you picked up the habit after your father passed, like journaling these morning routines and habits, like to me, it's how I help stay grounded in a very chaotic world and make sense of things and process things. And we live in such a fast-paced world that I if I don't do these things, and food, nourishment being one of them, then kind of good luck. It's I think one of the things that has been so important for me and I support others in doing is really honoring and acknowledging where I am currently, but let alone the world that I live in, and creating a plan that is supportive from there. And it's yeah, we live in a world where we we really don't have any nourishment in our food and beverages
Mhm.
like 95% of the time. I mean, I've done a lot of studying and research when it comes to soil health and nutrition, and it's pretty devoid. It's a pretty bleak landscape. So anytime I can support men and anyone when it comes to food, I certainly take the opportunity, and at the same time acknowledge how challenging it is because it takes time. Honestly, you save money for cooking, but it's time, right? It's time to learn. It's time to create space in your schedule to be able to cook for yourself. So it's a very challenging thing, unfortunately. As I say, we're kind of a couple of generations at least now removed from knowing how to cook.
Mhm. How
And
do you feel about the supplement, the fish oil, the magnesium and all of those. I've heard that because of the soil the devoid of nutrients. Do you do the supplement routine as well?
I sometimes I do. So I ebb and flow with it. I do my best to source the highest quality food and beverages, so I do know I'm getting more nutrients than most would, just because I pay really careful attention to what I'm buying and putting into my body. And the supplement industry is an interesting one. It has its space and place for sure. There are times and ways in which I do use them. Yeah, having your blood work done and having someone who can support you and understanding kind of what to actually be taking and not just taking them kind of willy-nilly is important. And I've read studies from all over that will tell you that they're great. Vitamins and supplements are great, and then I can read ones that talk about how the absorption and all that it just doesn't work.
Mhm.
So by and large, I do really just focus on the absolute best sourcing I can of the foods and like the beverages that I'm consuming, and that definitely correlates to my own health and well-being. But when we're in northern Michigan and in the winter and we're not getting sunlight and there's less local produce and things like that, it's absolutely something to consider, and it's 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 one that I certainly recommend talking to someone who knows that world really well, because there's so many products out there that just aren't worth a penny.
Yeah, I joined up with a um, program called Life Force, and they were doing patches because sometimes things can't make it through your gut and intestine and all of the nutrients. You bring it in and it basically gets digested away. And so I think, and then people are taking, injections now. So there's a lot of different things happening in that space, and it's good to get your perspective. So I know that you totally honor your men's circle's confidentiality and honor their privacy. However, is there one story from the men's devotion that hit you right in your soul? Maybe something that reminded you, this is why I do this. Of course, um, only if you're comfortable.
I would say I'd say one of those stories emerges every single time that I sit in a group in a circle with men. It's it's I would say, if I need to generalize, we culturally, from a societal standpoint, we have a certain perception of men of lacking intimacy, and the ability to nurture, care for one another, having deeper levels of emotional intelligence. And when presented with the opportunity, it's just unbelievable what men are capable of. And yeah, I would say there's been a tremendous amount. I mean, there's so many men that I've been sitting in counsel and circle with for over a couple years now, and all of those men, myself included, of course, are just completely different men than we were 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I'm trying to think if there's anything in particular that really stands out, but I really do see it every time. I'm always just kind of mind blown because, of course, we all I have my own judgments and projections that I will put on everyone. Like, a new man enters the space, I put projections and judgments on them. I am human. Obviously, I do my best to be mindful, and then every single time I'm almost always wrong about my initial judgments and projections and again, what we're capable of doing when provided the opportunity and the space and the place. And that's just, again, I think all of us struggle to find these spaces and places, but particularly for men, there's just not, I guess as an example of a few circles ago, there was a man who shared we were supporting another man, and afterwards he was just like, wow, it's so great for me to have an opportunity to tap into and use my nurturing energy because I don't get to do that out
This
in the world.
this is totally the opposite of Andrew Tate's men's groups, obviously.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
or not.
No, it definitely is. I mean, and to be honest, I'm only so familiar with him, and there's a huge faction though of kind of men's work or, you know, people welcoming men in through this very bravado, macho, and in some ways it's kind of taking like where men have been in terms of power and ego and things and just doubling down on it is almost kind of how I would put it. And so it's definitely not we're about what I'm supporting men in. It's it's really much more about creating balance and understanding all parts of ourselves. And, it goes back to the idea that we have masculine and feminine within, and really starting to understand ourselves and our emotions and who we are and why we do the things that we do, and tracing that back and creating a, much more, I mean, sovereign for sure, balanced men. And, to me, a balanced, I don't even know if I like the word, but a man is all things. Yes, he does have the wild and dangerous parts of himself, which are so critical and so needed in society, but also has the ability to nurture and care and listen and hold space and be present, not only for himself, but other people, So we're very complex human beings. And, Tate and other men like to, because it's quote unquote sexy or attractive or easy to manipulate and sell, focus on very certain masculine traits, and that's just not the whole story. And so it's, what I'm passionate about is looking at and honoring all parts,
Mhm.
and being able to work and support men from that space.
Mhm. Hmm. If I had if I was what do you call it, a mouse on the floor, somebody in the corner of the room
Yeah.
watching, I would wonder how, because I know that from the outside looking in, it seems completely, it's interesting, and I can see why so many women are interested in talking to you. Like, what's it like? Because I know I get the same thing, but from the different point of view. Um, because he's so obviously he just bears all and he's just right out there and you and from what I'm seeing here you are much more rounded and grounded and looking at it not so much sensationally but really looking at it from um right, living your best kind of life. If I were to paraphrase one of Oprah's, sorry, Oprah, um,
Yeah,
colloquialisms.
yes, absolutely. It's first off, it's hard to describe the spaces. Even when I'm chatting with men, when I have an intro call with them, I tell them I'm going to give you the 180, like the bird's eye view of this, but I'm going to attempt to explain something that can't really be explained. And men's work, and certainly the lens of men's work that I have, it absolutely taps into spirituality. It taps into mysticism, and there's plenty of indigenous wisdom, and so it's again it's complex and it's nuanced, and there's many different modalities and wisdom and things that are woven into what we do, which really speaks to, again, kind of what we're looking to cultivate. But one of my favorite, probably my favorite piece of wisdom that I will say many times within even one men's circle, that my mentor Vince Matoska shared with me, and he shares with everyone, is that all human beings want to be seen, heard, and loved.
Mhm.
And secondarily to that, we want to be respected and understood. Men particularly want to be respected, and women particularly want to be understood, if we were to generalize a little bit. But that's really the baseline of what I do in the beginning, especially when men are new to this work. It's seeing, hearing, loving, respecting, and understanding who they are, what they're coming in with, and like what their lived experience has been to this point. Because like no, we all, including myself, struggle to change or get uncomfortable or be vulnerable or face our edges. But we're certainly not going to do it unless we feel those things. Like no one's, like I say, I can't force anyone to change. And so that's really the approach that I take, is that energy and making sure that that's in the room first. Um, and so that's like the baseline of what we do. We create spaces and places where men can be seen, heard, loved, respected, and understood. And then absolutely there'll be that, what comes in then, of course, is we are going to hold your feet to the fire. Like we're going to be about accountability, integrity, and ownership. But it starts with honoring and acknowledging where men are at. Because if we can't honor and acknowledge where we're at, then there's really no chance of moving forward.
Sounds amazing. Awesome. Very amazing. How do you personally recharge when you're the one holding space for others?
Yeah, that's always a good question. Well, I would first and foremost say that I do struggle with it. It's a challenge. I kind of I can struggle with the idea of being like that martyr, like the I'm taking on the weight of the world, and it's just some sacred responsibility. I have to be very mindful of that, and thankfully, I'm sitting in men's circles where I get support for that, and I can work through and process that. So first and foremost, I am a student. I'm an active participant. I'm always doing my own work. I have a mentor. I'm always looking for new and mentors to support me in my own journey. I would advise anyone to never work with someone unless you know that that person is doing their own work, because there are so many false gurus and people who have a transformative experience and then just want to share it with others and don't do the work themselves. And that's one of the more dangerous types of people out there. Um, I humble myself all the time to there's a lot of, there's humbleness and humility in that I'm very young. I'm a student of this, and I'm here to support other men in what I have learned. Carl Jung has talked about, or did talk about, that he used the word therapist, but the therapist can only take a student as far as he's gone, or she's gone. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I, how I how I am mindful of your question is that I am an active student. I am endlessly curious and always learning and always doing my own work. And thankfully, I have an incredible group of men in my life that when I'm struggling or I'm being challenged, I can reach out to them.
Mhm. Well, God bless you. That is a really important and good for you. I really appreciate that. because it isn't easy to be in charge of something so profound and to know that you humble yourself and you're just one of the guys when you're in need. So at last, I know that this is sort of new and we've got the new year coming up. What's going to happen next year for you guys?
So we have our local men's circle community here in Traverse City that's open to any man here in the northern Michigan area. That hasn't and won't change. We meet twice a month. And so that is ongoing. For Men of Devotion, the next fellowship, the next daily accountability fellowship starting January 26th. It's a 6-week fellowship, and then the community will continue to grow, and those fellowships will continue, every 6 weeks or so. And so that's really what I'm looking at in terms of the community and its growth, and we're just taking it a step at a time, and it continues to grow. The community here locally is amazing, and Men of Devotion is really creating an opportunity, of course, for anyone. I mean, in our last fellowship, we had men from Australia, Costa
Oh,
Rica, South America, and Canada, as well as here in the United States. So, it's wherever you are, it's the it doesn't matter where you are, where you live, you are welcomed into a space where men are supporting one another and showing up every day for themselves and other men.
awesome. Wonderful. I know I've spoken with some of your uh, customers, I would say, or members, and they rave about it. And so if you're out there and you're hearing something that sounds intriguing or something that you think would be beneficial, Loghan, this has been such a grounding conversation. I really appreciate you showing up the way you do, honest, thoughtful, and deeply committed to your work. Conversations like this, truly remind me of spaces this like Men of Devotion really matter right now. I mean, it's so scary out there. Things happening all over the world, here in Cadillac, out in LA. So much, so much. If you're a news junkie, it's unbelievable. And if you're listening and something stirred in you, like I said a moment ago today, that pulled you toward more presence, more truth, more devotion in how you live and lead, don't ignore it. Don't just let it slide by. The nudge is there for a reason. And Loghan is here for a reason. He's here for you. I'll make sure that I put all the links in the show notes to Men of Devotion. And so you can explore Loghan's work and connect with the community. And I love the way he stated that this isn't a business, even though it's on the Bullish on Business podcast. It's a community, and it's a community that's growing. And see what he's building firsthand. Oh my gosh, people from all over the world, different countries. I had no idea. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for being there and here, for doing your own inner work. I know you do, and for being a part of these real conversations that move us forward. Until next time, I'm going to ask Loghan, do you have any last words you'd like to share with our audience?
Uh, Another piece of my favorite wisdom from my mentor, Vince, it's not what happens to us, it's what we make it mean. It's not what
Mm,
happens to me, it's what I make it mean.
yes.
And that is a piece of wisdom that I deploy all throughout my day as things are happening to me. It's an active choice as to what I'm making it mean. And it's so I have endless amounts of nuggets and wisdoms and all those things, but that one's a really powerful one, feels appropriate to end. And thank you
You're
for the
welcome.
time. I really
Yes, of
appreciate it.
course. Well, stay grounded, stay intentional, and keep charging toward the life and leadership you're here to live. And again, thanks, Loghan. You're a star. See you next time. Bye.